Welcome to A Poor Millionaire with your host, Curtis. Today we're going to talk about horror stories. I mean, it should be Halloween, right? I should have done this video in October. Next year I'm going to do 2020 horror stories. This is 2019 horror stories for rental properties. Everybody always assumes when you get a rental property that it's just going to be easy and it's going to get rented and it's never going to be empty and you're never going to have that tenant that stays over. You're never going to have that tenant that screws up, or you're never going to have that tenant that draws a gun on you. You're never going to have that tenant that burns it down. That tenant that's selling drugs. Horror stories. So this video is about everything you could expect being a landlord. Let's start off with fires, because that's a fun one. Most houses will burn, especially wood houses, and I own a lot of wood houses, so I've had about 3 fires. The worst phone call I can get is, your house is on fire. Your heart sinks. I mean, your heart sinks. You automatically assume it's a total loss. Now, the good thing is the fire department is usually there ASAP, right? They run out there, they spray it down, they put it out. Neighbors are real good about calling. Tenants are really good about calling because their stuff is in there too, and they're upset because their stuff's on fire. And usually the reason why the fire is because of the tenant, because the tenant had faulty equipment, or the tenant. I had one. Here's another horror story. I had one tenant that was like cooking some drugs in their house or something. That's what I found out later, and that's how they burned it down. The first one, it wasn't so bad, you know. It was like a small fire. Insurance came along, gave me a big fat check. It wasn't that bad. I didn't have to rip out the floors. I didn't have to rip out a lot of walls. It was some small. I had to change out a couple of windows that burnt. The bathroom got smogged up, so I had to rip out some of that stuff, paint all the walls, freshen it up, fix the roof, because the fire department likes to come out with their hatchets and just claw into the roof. So you got a big giant hole in the roof where they opened it up so they could get oxygen in there and so they could breathe. It all worked out. So the first one wasn't that bad. The second one was horrible. It was half of a duplex. So when one half of a duplex gets screwed up that badly with a fire, guess what? Then your other half is empty too. So then you've got 2 halves of a duplex empty. So I had 2 halves of a duplex empty, which is, obviously $800-900 worth of rent on this side, $800-900 worth of rent on that side. And then the other thing that happens a lot of times with these fire disasters is the electrical gets all screwed up. And when the electrical gets all screwed up, on that first house it didn't get screwed up. The fire didn't get towards the electrical stuff. On the second fire, it hit the electrical. So guess what? They red tagged the building. You have to get it all redone. And that's a nightmare because you've got to pull permits. You've got to rewire the whole damn building. Everything's got to be rewired. Rewiring an entire house is expensive. One of the biggest nightmares right after fire is people stealing your electrical wire out of your building. So when you have a fire, all right, it burns the building. You come in, you gut everything out. You start fixing it. You got all the walls up. You start running the wire, you got your permits, you're ready to go, and the very next day, somebody comes in and steals all your wire. So, boom! Now you got to do the whole thing all over again. You got to pay for the wire, you got to pay for the time, and it's also the headache because you're in the middle of trying all these different things you got to do, and you just had all your wire stole out of the building. And wire is not cheap. And obviously labor of fixing it's not cheap. And this happened at one of these places. It happened like 3 times in a row. I mean, literally, I'd wire it one week. They come in, steal it. Have to wire it again. They come in, steal it. I've paid people to stay in empty house. I've paid homeless people. Well, they were like in between places, so almost homeless. I've paid them a little bit extra money. They were actually my workers. My very low-end workers are like, hey, I can stay here. They'd stay there and actually watch the property while we were working on it so we could get it fixed up and finished. So we did that remodel on those 2 duplexes. That took me forever. Probably a year, and that's the worst. It's not, you get your insurance check, that's not a big deal. It fixes all the stuff. It's not having the rent for when that place is empty, because a fire is 6 months, period. You get a fire, you're 6 months, that place is going to be empty. It was a year on the duplex, 1 solid year of not getting rent on 2 sides at $800, but I think it was $800. Let's assume $800. That's $1,600 a month, not coming in for an entire year. That is a huge loss. Third fire, massive. This was probably one of my bigger ones. and I just finally got it finished. It took me almost 2 years to get this house completed. It's just every time I turned around, it was such a big project. We literally had to we didn't gut the house, but I mean, it's just like every wall had to be painted. Every bathroom had to be retiled. Every floor. And you know what's worse is I just remodeled this house. I just put in new carpet. I just put in new tile. I just fixed it up. And all the windows had to be replaced. All the tile had to be replaced. All the carpet had to, every wall. I mean, I just spent a good, at least five to 10,000. You count, it's like $5,000 worth of parts, $5,000 worth of labor. I just spent $10,000 fixing this place up. I rented it out to a renter, and this is the person that was cooking meth or something. That's what neighbors told me. I'm not sure if it's true or not. I'm just gonna go with that's a high possibility. Why else did the place start on fire? The place has been there for almost 80 years, and then one day it's on fire. Obviously, it's a random act. So. Same thing. Whole house has to be rewired. Whole house has to be inspected. A whole house have to pull permit. You got to repaint everything. You got to fix the roof. Roof, like I said, those firemen show up. First thing they do is get out the hatchets and just hack away at your roof. They got big old giant holes in the roof. You got to fix that. You got to fix the inside. You got to fix the tile, all that carpet, all the paint. I mean, it was a huge remodel. I would say that thing will probably cost me $30,000 remodel. Worse than that, though, was going without rent for almost 2 years. And part of the reason why I couldn't get it rented was I'd hire a crew to come in. And this was the other problem, is just finding good people to keep working, because it's just so much work to do. People get bogged down. Oh, and it smells bad, too. People don't want to work. Your low-end skilled employees don't want to work in something that smells bad. They'll just I'll just go to another job site. I get people quitting all the time. So finally, I got a good crew in. I got good, solid 4 guys, and I just basically hired 4 brand new guys. 4 brand new guys, and I set them on that project, and that's all they did for basically 6 months until it was done. And that's the other thing, I paid 4 guys to work nonstop. That's all they worked on for 6 months. Well, I fixed that entire house up and made it perfect again. Now, obviously, this house is better than ever was, because now it's got all new siding, it's got new windows, it's got new carpet again, it's got new tile again, it's got new countertops, new air. I mean, basically new everything. New electrical box outside. Thousands and thousands of dollars later, finally, the relief of having a property that's been empty for over 2 years, being rented, and having someone move in, and now you're getting that rent back. I mean, it's just like, that was the thing that would keep me up at night, is not having the rent on that property, because it's just sitting there, and you blame yourself, because you're like, if I just worked harder, if I just did something, this is my responsibility, and I have to get it done. And it just gnaws at you that you've got this property sitting there, it's not making money, and you're just assuming because that's not making money, you're losing money, and maybe your business is starting to fail. Maybe you're going under. Maybe you're going to start losing other properties. Maybe bad things are going to happen. What else are you missing? It just eats away at you. The relief to have all of your properties up and going and rented is the way to go. That's a horror story. Have a property for 2 years not rented because I couldn't get it fixed. And between permits, electrical, I mean, just obviously anytime the government gets involved and inspections and all that good stuff, it's just a nightmare. So fire is the worst nightmare. If you're a landlord, the last thing you want to hear on the phone, is your building's on fire. Oh my God. It just that is the worst nightmare. I basically went over the worst one right away. So all the rest of them are actually more funny than horrible. But fire is the worst one. The number 2 worst thing, the worst nightmare, is for you to go in, your house is empty for 1 or 2 days. You go to show the house, you walk in, and you look, and somebody's been in the attic, and you're like, oh no. You go up in the attic, and all the wire's missing. They've ripped out all the wire. So now you have to pay someone to go in and put all the wire back in. But you're wondering, all right, is that guy who just stole all the wires, he's standing outside watching us come in and put in the wire, and then he's gonna and you know, always get hit. You always get hit on the weekend. So you start on Monday, you work a couple days, you get your electrical in, you get it all fixed up, get it inspected, get it turned on, it's working, everything's great. Come Friday, you go home, you're all right, I'm gonna rent it. You put it in your ad, you're gonna go show it on Monday. You come in Monday, and all the wires gone again. This is the horror stories of South Dallas. All my houses are in South Dallas, but I mean, obviously the good part about low-income housing is the amount of money that you pay for the house and the rent. Usually the rent is super high and the cost of the houses is super low. Now, obviously, a lot of places, the value of the houses is rising, which gave me that horrible tax bill. The value of the house is rising, even though I paid very little for it, which is kind of good on one hand if I wanted to sell, but I don't want to sell. And the rent's raising just a little bit. So that was the good part. Used to be is the rent was really high, the value was really low, so you could get in and you'd make a good solid 25 to 30% on your houses. Now, you wouldn't actually make that 25 to 30% because you've got people ripping out the wire. You got obviously empty units because of fire, empty units because of vandalism, empty units because of turnover rate. Which brings me to horror story number 3. Biggest problem that you're going to have as a landlord. Evictions, high turnover, and people going to court. They owe full rent, going to eviction court, and then you walk into eviction court, they haven't told you not one time about one single code problem. But they walk into eviction court and they've got a list of things. They're like, well, they didn't fix anything. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. And we're like, you've never actually told us that anything didn't work. So this is like actually our first in knowing this. We fix everything that you tell us. Even if you do owe us rent, and they owe full rent, and they're in court saying that you didn't fix anything, and that you're a douchebag, and on and on and on and on. And if you got a new judge, well, that judge is going to believe him. That judge is going to say, oh, well, wow, you're such a horrible landlord. Why haven't you? They'll say, well, the air conditioning doesn't work, and the judge will turn to you and he'll go, well, why haven't you fixed the air conditioner, sir? And it's like, oh, when did you stop beating your wife, sir? You know, that's basically what they're saying. So, well, obviously, if I'd known the air conditioner was not working, I would have gone out and fixed it. Well, 9 times out of 10, though, the very next day after eviction court, whether I've won or lost, I drive out to the tenant's house. I walk in with my laser temperature gauge. I turn on the AC and I point it up there. And 9 times out of 10, it's blowing out, 50, 60 degrees. It's cold. And I'm like, what's going on? Right? And then the tenant's like, well, when I come home from work at night, I turn on the AC and it just doesn't cool down the whole house. And I was like, that's not how central heat works. That's not how central AC works. You have to leave it on all day, and that way it keeps the house cool, and that way it keeps it cool all the time. Central AC, they just don't understand central AC works all day. But that's, most of the time, it's not even because they don't understand. It's because they're just playing games. They're lying. They're actually going in front of the judge. That's the biggest problem, is tenants lying to judges, tenants lying to code enforcement. I've literally had tenants break things, right, intentionally, call code enforcement. My guy notices that it's broken. He'll fix it, repair it, put it back together, and then code enforcement will come back in, and they'll be like, I want to show you this busted sink over here. And then code enforcement walks over and goes, it's working. And they go, that's impossible. That's impossible. And my repair guy's like, well, yeah, I noticed that it came loose, so I fixed it. This happens all the time. All the time. They just lie to code. They'll call up code and they'll make this long list of things that are wrong with the property, and we'll come out and fix everything across the list, all the way down. It'll be a palace. Every single little line item that they can think of, we'll fix it. All right. The very next day, half of the things are broken again because the tenants basically breaking them on, because we'll put up the smoke detectors. The tenant starts smoking. First thing they do is take down the smoke detectors, right? All right. The door, they don't like, the lights. We'll put the lights in, the outside lights. We'll put the light bulbs in, right? First thing the tenant does, they take the lights out. Why? They don't want to pay the electricity bill, right? So we put them in, and they take them out. We put them in, and they take them out. Over. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. And you know what we've learned? Actually, I've learned is when we get that code list, what we do is we'll come out to the proper, like when we have, all right, we'll get the phone call from code. New code guy. Sir, you have an extreme list of problems at your building. You need to take care of this immediately, sir. Do you know that it's all screwed up? And I'm like, of course, absolutely. Could I have the list? And he's like, well, absolutely, sir. I'll send that list over now. Get the list. Very next day, we go out, we fix everything, and half of it's not really wrong. We fix every single thing on that list. And then what we do is we wait for the day before he's going to come out, right? And we go back and we make sure everything on the list is done. And we fix everything again. Because I guarantee you, it's like anytime you're fixing something for a tenant, for code, you're going to walk out that door. Like I said, they're going to take that light bulb out, right? Because they're not paying for that light bulb outside. You know, they're not paying for that light bulb outside, or they just don't want the light on the outside. They don't want people looking at their house. They want to look like they're not there. I don't know what. Or here's the other good one. They need that light bulb for a lamp, right? God, hey, Susie, we need a light bulb for the lamp, right? Oh, well, there's one outside. Why don't you go grab it? Okay, right? They go out, they get the lamp, the light bulb. They come, they put it in their lamp. Boom, they got light in their house and free bulb for everyone, right? So I don't have a light bulb outside, so now the code person shows up. Sir, do you know you don't have a light out here? And I'm like, I literally put one in there yesterday, right? Yesterday I put a light bulb in there. I screwed it in, and they screwed it out. And then the same thing with smoke detectors. Smoke detectors, I will check it 3 times. One, when the code enforcement guy says, hey, you don't have smoke detectors in your house, I come out, put smoke detectors in the very next day. Why? Because you got to have smoke detectors. Then the day before the code comes out, I make sure put them back up because they're sitting right there on their coffee table with the batteries hanging out. I put the batteries back in. I put them back on the wall, right? Very next day, when code shows up, we show up an hour early. We walk in. We put the batteries back in the smoke detector. We hang it back up for the 3rd time, right? We did it once when we were called the first time. We did it twice the day before, and we did it the 3rd time when we were actually there before he shows up. And we even tell a tenant, say, look, I know you don't want the smoke detector up, but we have to do this for code. After code inspects, it is your obligation to leave it up. But remember, that is your obligation. It's not my obligation. I put it up. Beep. It's working. Everybody should be happy. Code walks in. I press the button. Beep. I show him it's there. He's happy. Everybody's happy. I fix everything else. We're good to go. And you know what's funny is they still argue with code people. And I've had code people go, yeah, this person's crazy. Yeah, we're not coming back. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, and okay. Now, the next nightmare of having tenants. This is a doozy. The city. And I've already kind of, every one of these kind of leans into the next one, doesn't it? The city. The city is just, you know, it's like, obviously, you know, the city, most people work for the city, are good people, try and do their best. And I understand in certain circumstances you have landlords who do not take care of their properties. And obviously code enforcement is a good way to get these landlords to take care of their property. We take care of our property. We take care of everything. Anytime you call us, we have at least 4 people, at least 4, and we've had as many as 8 guys on staff at all times, and that's nonstop fixing plumbing leaks, fixing every little tiny thing. And we contract out for AC, we contract out for electrical work. Sometimes we contract out for plumbing if it's major issues. So we've got nonstop people. We fix stuff every single day. We get 3 or 4 phone calls a day. We go and fix all. We have one guy. All he does is go around fixing toilets, fixing light switches, making sure everything's working, right? So we try to fix everything. If a tenant calls us, we get it fixed. That's what we do, right? All right. Now with all that said, I had a 6-plex, right? And this is like one of those big horror stories. And the city would come out once a year and basically with the cops, with the fire department, with 3 or 4 inspectors, and they would go over every little inch of this place. And every little tiny inch. And they would talk to me like I was the biggest criminal on the face of the planet. Like I did his stuff on. One time they wrote me a $700 ticket because I didn't fill in a space. Now, I told my guys to put gravel in it, and it was just a little space behind the building. Wasn't even the front. It wasn't a pothole. It was just a little space in the behind, and I told my guys to put rocks in it, and they didn't put enough rocks in it, so I got a $700 ticket for that. $700 for nothing. And it was such a small thing. But whatever, you know, it didn't get done. I understand. Bam, $700 ticket. Moving on. Worse than that, they actually sued me for it. Like, literally, they show up. This is a first time inspection, right? First time inspection. They hand me the lawsuit and say, you're being sued. And I'm like, for what? I mean, if you just give me the list of problems, I'll be happy to take care of them. And they're like, well, sir, this is how we do it now. We just automatically sue everyone. So I'm literally have to go to court. I had to go to court 3 or 4 times, go in front of a judge because I am being sued because this is just how they do it. There wasn't any, here's your list, get your list done and you'll be fine. None of that. And you give me a list, if the city gives me a list and they say, hey, do all these line items and you're fine, of course I'm going to do the list. I knock them all out. I like I said, do it once, I do it right away. And then I do it the day before they show up. And then I check it the day of to make absolutely sure. And then all my stuff passes and everybody's happy. Put a fire hydrant here, put a fire hydrant there. Put a smoke detector there, put a smoke detector there. Everything that they want, I take care of it, right? They sued me literally the day one. They're like, here's your lawsuit. You're being sued. And basically, and the way they talk to you, they're like, well, this is a criminal place. There's people here selling drugs and stuff. And I'm like, how am I supposed to stop people from selling drugs? I mean, how am I supposed to know this person? They're like, well, you should know. You should know. I'm like, I can't come here and make sure they don't sell drugs, right? I'm not a police officer. I can't kick in their door. I can't do random searches of their house to see if they're selling drugs. And you know what I tell them? When I tell the code people, I was like, if this person's selling drugs, I will evict them. Okay, but I need the person who lives here as the person who sold the drugs. All I need is a criminal report. They're gone, right? They're gone. Even though if they're selling drugs, why aren't they in jail, right? But no, it's like, well, you're building, everyone's selling drugs. I'm like, I don't have any proof of that. You're basically, you want me to evict people based on your word. And actually, that's against the law. And that brings me to the next one to deal with the city. When the city asks you to do something that's against the law. Hence, that is against the law. For me to evict a person on hearsay, basically, someone said, hey, they're selling drugs. It's like, I don't know. And you know what? It's like you can't tell they're selling drugs. So how am I supposed to know they're selling drugs? I have no proof that they're selling drugs. That's the thing is, when I evict a person, I have to go in front of a judge. I have to walk in there. I have to say, Your Honor, I am evicting this person because they're selling drugs. And you know what the judge is going to say? Judge is going to say, well, where's your proof? And I'm going to say, well, someone said they were. And judge is going to say, well, I'm not going to give you your eviction then. And the tenant's living there again, right? So how am I supposed to evict someone who isn't breaking their lease without proof? I need proof. If I could take pictures of it, you know, but you know, it's like one guy standing next to another guy shaking hands. That's not proof that they're selling drugs. You know, do I need to do like an undercover investigation on them? I mean, isn't that the police's responsibility? They do the sting, and then they get the person caught in the drug conspiracy, and then they arrest the person, and then I'll be happy to evict them, right? Well, the next thing they asked me to do, it's against the law. Well, the federal government came in and decided that it's illegal to deny houses to people who are felons and run their criminal background, right? And I looked up the law, and it's legit. Then the city came in and said I had to run reports on people who are, and if they are felons, I can't allow them to live there. So I have the federal government telling me one thing and the city telling me another. I even sent them the email. I said, hey, you know, you're asking me to violate the law. And you know what city's response is pretty much what it always is. Bust rocks, right? They're like, you got to do it anyway. And you're like, let me figure out a very creative way around this, because I have one person telling me one thing and another person telling me another thing. Obviously, I figured out a creative way where I didn't break the law on either side, and everyone was happy. That's just the magic of being a business person. Sometimes you have to find creative solutions to step between the raindrops, All my tenants were happy. All my tenants got moved in. I never denied a tenant moving in, and everything worked out. Luckily, 99% of the people that were applying for the place didn't have a felony background, which is hilarious because these are the same people they say are selling drugs. So who go figure, right? Well, and that brings me to the next part of that story. That same sixplex. They all these problems once a year. The city coming in and they even brought me in. They brought me downtown like I was a criminal. They brought me in the interrogation, and the city attorney's there, and code enforcement, and the police, and another code person. We're all sitting at this big table and we're discussing this big huge problem of how you're a bad landlord and we need to take care of this problem. And I'm like, guys, I don't understand. You give me a list, I take care of it. You tell me what's wrong, it's done. I don't understand why you guys are doing this. And you know what I told them? I told them this simple thing. I said, look, I'm a landlord that fixes stuff. All right? I fix everything when you tell me. And you should know this because you've dealt with me before, right? So when you come in, you say that you're suing me. You just give me a lawsuit right out of the gate with no questions asked, no nothing. You didn't give me a list. You didn't give me time to fix it. You didn't do anything. You just gave me a lawsuit right out of the gate. I was like, you're making me feel like a criminal. You're making me feel like I did something wrong. I haven't done anything wrong. I have fixed this building up. I've kept it clean. I've kept it rented. I've kept it safe. It's been basically the best it's ever been. It looks the best it's ever been. It's got all new siding. It's got all new hot water. It works on all the units. Everything works. Everything looks good. All right, it's the best it ever been. You tell me take down that fence, I take down that fence. You tell me put that fence up, I put that fence up. I've done everything you guys told me to do. You know what's going to happen? You guys messing with me like this, I'm going to sell it. I guarantee you, I will bet you $1,000 the next person that moves in. I said all of this to them. And I said it nicely because I meant it. I said the next landlord you get, he's not going to take care of this building. I guarantee you. And sure enough, you know what I did? I immediately put that building up for sale. I'd had enough. I was like, look, every single year you guys come in and you rant and rave about nothing. And it's basically like they're just doing a check mark, right? I think, well, that was a really problem area, right? So I get it's a problem area, but to blame the landlord, it's like, it's not my responsibility. If you can't get the tenants on drug charges, then what am I supposed to do? I can't evict them. I can't go in front of, so I've got two judges, or I've got the city telling me to kick them out, and I got the eviction court judge saying you can't kick them out unless they actually commit a crime, and you have proof of it, right? Or even proof of a guy who's living there that's selling drugs. He doesn't even have to be on a lease. He just has to be living there. You got to go, Frank got arrested, and Frank lived there, right? Bam. I can evict him over that. I've done it before, and I'll do it again. And I had the building working, I had it rented, I had everything working smooth. They told me, they gave me this whole spiel, they brought me in there, treated me like a criminal. I said, I'm going to sell this building and you're going to get a bad landlord. And guess what? I sold that building, and guess what? They got a bad landlord. And I get, basically 3 months after I sold it, I drove by, half of it's boarded up. And whenever a building's boarded up, that's a bad sign. You never want a boarded up building in a drug area. Guess what? Now they start living there. Now they're moving in. And then basically, I waited another 6 months. The other half's boarded up. The entire building, the entire thing is boarded up and shut down. I'm sure eventually they're going to tear it down and build new houses. But those people who live there are going to move right back in. Yes, they'll be brand new houses. And that probably was their plan all along. And that's probably why they were messing with me, is because they wanted that land to build other houses. But it doesn't matter to me what their real thinking was. What all matters to me is I was landlord, I was making it work, and it was just too much of a headache. It's probably my worst nightmare property. And one of the properties that I would never go to without being very aware of what's going on. Very bad part of town. So anyway, I sold that property. I made a nice, tidy profit. So I got lucky. I got real lucky. And I sold that property. I actually made $100,000 off that property. Bought it for about $100 and I sold it for about $200. So in the end, I saved the day. I got really lucky. I could have ended up selling that property for dirt. The way that everything was going, and if I had sold it for dirt, I would have took a massive loss. But you know what? Here's the thing. If the city would have been off my back and hadn't been doing what they're doing, I would have kept that property forever because it's making money. Even with the headaches of the tenants and being in the bad part of town, if it's making me, $2,000 a month just coming into my pocket every single month. Why am I going to give it up? I'm just going to keep on. I'll keep the headache for $2,000 a month. But when the city comes in and the city starts suing you and the city starts showing up once a year and they're just like every little problem. This isn't up to code. This isn't up to code. Every time the way they talk to you, it's like they're just insinuating and they look at you. They look at that evil eyes of you are a scumbag. You're an evil landlord, and we're gonna get you, my precious, right? And I'm like, I'm doing whatever you ask. I'm the good guy here. Give me a list. I'll take care of it. No problem. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Anything you want, I take care of it, right? Every time. And I guess, it worked out. Everybody's happy in the end, but man, it was a nightmare for me. That was that was a horror story from hell. That sixplex. It was a nightmare every single year when they showed up. And I knew they were going to show up once a year. And I was like, and that last time was just too much. Every year they'd show up. I mean, the first time they showed up is just a couple code enforcement guys. And they made me a list and I took care of it. Second year they showed up, it was like twice as many code enforcement guys. And they made me a longer list. And it just thousands of dollars. That's when I did all the siding. I painted the whole thing, re-roofed it. I did all these things. Anyway, in the end, I sold it. I made lots of money on it. It's like so many times in my life I have been lucky, and I really appreciate that. I guess somebody's looking out for me. But it always starts off with just the disaster of a lifetime. And as an entrepreneur and as an investor, you've got to figure out ways to turn lemon and lemonade, right? That is your job as a business owner. As you get all these problems and you turn them into opportunities and you make things happen. I had that property for probably about 5 or 6 years. I made a ton of money on it, and then I sold it and I made $100K on it. You can't beat that. Now, like I said, I wouldn't even have sold it for $100K profit. If I didn't have the city messing with me, I would have kept it forever. Let's do one more story before we close out here. This long video, because man, I could just talk forever about horror stories. It's endless. The terror of being a landlord. Don't be a landlord. It's too scary. No, it's you make money. You make money. So you make so much money, and that's what you have to do, guys. You have to understand. You have headaches for the amount of money you make. Headaches for the amount you make more money in real estate, but you have more headaches. But you make more money, so you have to decide which one it is. And real estate is a really good way to make money, but you are going to have horror stories. One of the other horror stories of low-income houses, just a couple little small ones. I walked into a rental house. The guy who had left, he had the bright idea he was going to take a hammer and go around and put holes in every single thing. And he put holes in a couple of cabinets and the floor and stuff. And my guys came in, they're like, oh my gosh, Curtis, he put holes in everything. And I'm like, whatever, it's cost of doing business. Walked out, said, go fix it, guys. It wasn't that big a deal. To him, it was the greatest thing. And then I had another, actually it was a worker who had the bright idea he was going to go put chocolate syrup all over the walls, and he's going to get me good, put chocolate syrup all over the carpet, and he threw food everywhere, and he's just like, he's literally a worker of mine. He thought, what did he think? He think that I was going to clean it myself? Did he think I was going to get there and rip out the carpet personally, and I was going to paint the walls, and while I was painting it, I was going to be like, you did this to me, oh. No, I walked in, I laughed a little bit, and I said, well, we're going to paint the walls anyway. We're going to replace the carpet anyway. We ripped out the carpet. We painted the walls. Put in brand new carpet. You couldn't tell? Boom. Oh, he tried to do some other stuff with the drain, but all these people, they're not very creative. When you're doing something stupid, you're not usually creative because you're not really trying that hard. You're not putting a lot of effort into it. So usually when people do silly stuff on your apartment, your houses, because they're gonna get you, right? Usually it's pretty silly. I've had people take stuff from the bathroom, I'm not going to mention what it is, and wipe it on the walls and on the tub. And they somehow think that I personally am going to come in and clean this, right? And I come in and I look at it, I chuckle, and I go, man, that's pretty stupid, right? And then I have one of my workers come in and clean it, because that's what I pay them for. Obviously, when you have them clean weird stuff, you've got to buy them the protective mask, protective breather, and gloves, and suit them up, right? Suit them up for cleanup, and that's the easy one. Another big disaster. I could go on forever. One house I had a leak under the house the entire time the tenant was there. And the entire floor of the house rotted out while the tenant was there. I don't know how. I guess he wasn't paying his water bill or something. Every once in a while, the city lets him get away with it because there was so much. It was like a swamp below the house. And it just rotted out the floor. Plumbing and water issues, you've got to fix them immediately. I didn't know there was a water leak, or I would have fixed it immediately. It was an easy fix. We came in, we fixed the water leak, but we literally had to rip out almost the entire floor. We had walls that were just like holded up by nothing as we fixed the floor underneath them. We fixed that entire floor, which took like 2 months. 2 or 3 months of fixing that floor, and no rent. No rent. That's the worst. No rent. I don't mind fixing stuff. It's when you don't get the rent and you can't fix it because the person doesn't live there. That's when it really matters. And this is my last horror story. This lasted for about a year. All right. I had this one property, a nice big house in a nice neighborhood, and every time you flush, it just go like on the ground outside, right? And I would pay a plumber $2,000 or $3,000. He'd say he'd run a new pipe and he's gonna get it fixed. And he'd go in there, he'd take my money, he'd get it fixed. It'd work for 3 or 4 days, and then it wouldn't work. And I'd call the plumber back up and I'd say, "Hey, what happened?" And just rinse and repeat over and over. And whenever the plumbers walk out, they're like, "Oh, well, it's got to dry out before we can fix it, sir." So I'm like, "Okay." So we turn on the vacuum, we vacuum out all the water. This went on for a year. I could not get this plumbing. Finally, I had to rent a backhoe. I had to dig the whole, and that's the other thing. When we rented this backhoe, it was a nightmare. I mean, the whole yard turned into just a swamp. I drove out there one time, and then the guy's in the middle of the yard with a backhoe, and it's just the tires are spinning, and he's just in this big giant hole. And I was like, this is a nightmare. It's like, I do not want anything to do with this. You take care of this. I'm going home. This is insane. And he's like, "I got it, sir. I got it. I'll take care of it." And somehow, magically, I don't know how, that idiot. I mean, literally, when I left there, I was like, I'm literally going to have to come back and fix this myself. I don't see how this guy's going to get it done. And that idiot, and he was an idiot, he somehow managed to get it out of that hole, and he dug the hole, and he got he dug the hole, and he still didn't get it fixed. I had another guy come out after him, and he dug the hole again, and we laid all new pipe from the city all the way to the house. Cost me, I don't know, $4,000 or something ridiculous. Brand new pipe all the way. And then whenever we went out there, we turned the water on to make absolute. I was like, I need to see that water flowing. We put a water hose in it and we watched it flow. And then we put a hose in the tub and we watched it flow. And it flowed. And then ever since then, knock on wood, it's worked. But that was the thing. That was always, because code enforcement constantly, because you got that smell. You got that. You don't want sewage. You don't want water. You don't want fire. The sewage is the worst. And I did everything to fix it. I sent plumber after plumber after plumber, and nothing worked. Everything would last for a week or a couple days or a month, and then back to not working again, and then back to sewage back up, and then back to tenant calling code coming out there and giving me the riot act, and they're like, "Hey, there's sewage on the ground," and I'm like, I know, I've paid a plumber to fix it 15 times. That is the worst. Paying money for something to get fixed and then it doesn't get fixed. That is the biggest horror story ever, is to pay money. Luckily I had tenants the whole time. That was the only saving grace. But the worst part of that was I was always worried they were going to move out, or that code enforcement was going to get onto me. I was going to get a ticket, and I had to go out there and put lye, and I had to fix the yard, and I fixed it. I did lye multiple times. I did fix the yard multiple times. Finally, the last time I did it, $4,000, whole new pipe. Finally, it's been fixed, and it has worked ever since. And thank God. That is one of the things. I used to wake up in the middle of the night, and the first worry that come to my mind was, is that pipe backing up? Is there sewage? And there is literally probably sewage underneath that house right now. And I'm thinking to myself, that's disgusting. That's horrible. It's like, I really want to get this fixed. I've spent so much money, and it's like, why can't I get this fixed? Why can't I get this fixed? Why can't I get this fixed? And that is a horrible feeling. So guys, those are horror stories. This is what it's like to be a landlord. And it goes on and on and on. I could talk about evictions. Let's talk about evictions just for a little bit. This is going to be my longest video ever. The horror stories. So we're not editing a lot of this out. It's going to be horror stories forever. And I could go on for 6 hours, guys. I'm just giving you the quick and easy one. All right? Going and getting evictions. Now, when you buy low-end real estate, you're going to be going to eviction court quite a lot. Once a month, you're going to evict anywhere from 2 at the minimum to I've evicted up till 10. I've been in eviction court, and I've have about 50 units, and I've been all the way up to 10. Now, obviously, what happens usually is even when you go to eviction court, let's say you have 8 or 7. Let's say 7. 7 is my normal number. 7 or 6 is my normal number, right? You go into eviction court, you evict 7 people. Now, that's 7 times you have to write a check for basically $141, right? That's a huge amount of money, right? To evict these people who haven't paid you rent. And each one of these is at least somewhere around $1,000. Some are a little less, some are a little more, but let's round it out to about, so you owe $7,000, all right? And you go in, and on top of that $7,000, you've got to write a check for $141 each eviction, right? Now, luckily, at least 2 of those guys are going to pay their rent before you go to court, right? So 2 of those guys are going to pay their rent. Now, they might pay their court cost, and they might pay their late eviction fees, but that's a story for another time. Then we've got our 5 guys we're going to court with, right? We show up at court, and let's say 2 of them don't show up. That is your best case scenario. 2 don't show up. Awesome, great. They didn't show up to court. Now you can do a writ of possession. Obviously, you call them up and you say, hey, you didn't pay your rent. We got the eviction. Would you like to pay your rent, your court costs, your late fees, and stay? Or we have to do our next step, right? But then you've got those 3. You got the 3 left who showed up to court. Now, on a good day, with a good judge and a good court, you walk in, you say, hey, Sam hasn't paid his rent. And Sam goes, well, I haven't paid my rent, and I just lost my job, and I got a new job, and I'm working real hard. And the judge says, you get an eviction, right? On a bad day, the first tenant that walks up is the worst one, and he or she says, this is the worst landlord ever. They don't fix anything. They're horrible. They're so unprofessional. They're so unprofessional. They sent me a pay or get out. And I paid my rent last month, and I don't need this, blah, 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 blah. And they come up with some fascinating story about how we are not fixing stuff, right? My AC, the AC doesn't work. That's a good one, right? So the first tenant hears that. AC doesn't work. Well, guess what? I can guarantee you $1,000. Tenant number 2 and tenant number 3 are going to say the exact same thing. They're like, that's a good idea. And it worked. The judge had a little bit of sympathy. The judge is like, well, Mr. Curtis, did you fix the AC? Why didn't you do that? If it's a good judge. If it's a bad judge, it's going to be like, why haven't you fixed the AC, sir? What kind of operation you running over there? Right? And most of the time you get good judges, though, so let's take the benefit of the doubt. Good judge says, AC's out, right? You go, no, AC, as far as we know, they've never called, they've never told us. Or the reverse, they'll call, and we go out and check it, laser it. It says it's working, everything's great. Bam, boom. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's working. It's like I go out and I check it, it's working. And I said, Judge, I went out there, I checked it, laser, everything's working fine. Temperature's good. AC's pumping out 60 degrees, 70 degrees. I checked the temperature of the room. The room was a comfortable 75 or 74, whatever the thermostat was at. Everything's working great. And Judge goes, okay, great. Or they believe it's a tenant, because sometimes these tenants, they come in and they like, if I had one guy in a wheelchair, right? And the guy comes in the wheelchair and you feel, and even I felt sorry for him. I'm like, hey, Guy's in a wheelchair, right? You have to feel sorry for him, right? And so, but anyway, the worst case scenario, you get that tenant that comes up and they're like, end of the world, worst landlord ever, blah, 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 blah. And the judge believes them. The judge like kind of sides with them. But 9 times out of 10, you still get your eviction. But the problem is here comes tenant number 2. And he says the exact same thing as tenant number 1, right? And tenant number 2 says, worst landlord ever, so unprofessional, and never fixes anything, and the AC doesn't work, and he's a horrible guy, and I don't know, it's just, I don't even understand it. And then he goes, did you pay your rent? And he goes, well, I was going to pay my rent, but they didn't fix the AC, blah, 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 blah. And if the judge sides with him, he might get a little leeway. Well, I've had, one time I had a plumbing, this is classic example of how they find a loophole. I had a guy, he said that his tub was backing up. Well, we'd already sent a guy out there to fix it. The plumber out there to fix it. Plumber said, we snaked it. It's working fine. Here's your Roto-Rooter receipt. And I said, here, Judge, here's Roto-Rooter receipt. And the guy was he was a young guy. He was sympathetic. And he said to the judge, and it looked like he just started working. And he said, he showed a picture to the judge on his phone that the tub was dirty. And I looked at it and I was like, that could be anything. That could just be dirt. But he was saying it was backing up with stuff from toilet, right? I'm not gonna say it on YouTube because I want to eventually get monetized. You know what I'm saying, right? So judge is sympathetic towards him. He actually tells me that I have to come back next week. I can't get the eviction on him. I've got to come back next week on Thursday to send the plumber out there to verify that it has been done, even though we all know it's been done. Well, luckily. And I still had to. That's the other thing. I had to spend $350 to have Roto-Rooter come out again and go say, yeah, it's working fine. I don't know what you're talking about, right? Everything's good. I was like, fine, give me my piece of paper. Let me go show the judge, right? Bring it in on Thursday. Kid doesn't show up. He's already moved out, right? So I just wasted another week, and I had to drive up there to court, and I had to sit and wait for my name to be called. So I just spent 4 to 5 hours on court. I spent $350 and all the headache, and this guy hasn't paid his rent for a month and a half. So now the house has been full for an entire. Then I've got to get a writ, and then I got to wait for the constable to come out and do all this. So that's the court. The court, sometimes you get lucky. Most of the time, and I think for the most part, courts are pretty fair. We've got a really good judge who. He cares about people, but at the same time, though, you have to pay your rent. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Even if you have a bad judge, and I wouldn't say bad judge, I say a super tenant friendly judge. I mean, just always on their side. They're giving them every opportunity. He believes everything they say, no matter how outlandish. They say, aliens came down from the sky, and I couldn't pay my rent. They're like, and then they'll turn to me and they'll go, but sir, aliens came down from the sky, and that's the reason why he couldn't pay his rent. And I'm like, he's clearly lying, sir. But I say very nicely, I'm like, sir, I don't necessarily believe his alien story. And they're like, why wouldn't you believe that? That sounds perfectly honorable to me, right? That seems perfectly reasonable. Perfectly reasonable, right? So, you've got this guy telling him that that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a very tenant-centric judge. But even with that situation, in the end, I'm going to get because the guy didn't pay the rent, he's gonna give him every opportunity. Maybe I have to come in next week, same thing, or we have to go to the or he'll just harass me. There's always some problems with a judge that's super tenant friendly. I don't want to give all the tenants out there all the hints, right, on how they can get you, right? But that judge will tell. That's the other thing. The judge will tell him all the ways you can get the landlord. He's like, if you try this, you can get the landlord more, right? You can stay there longer, right? Right? Don't you want to stay there longer, rent free? And I'm like, no, I'm gonna. Please stop. It's like the guy hasn't paid his rent. Why are you doing this? But a good, honest judge will say the guy's gonna move. Guy hasn't paid his rent. He'll ask him, he'll say, and the good judge will be like, hey, sir, did you pay your rent? And the guy will go, no, I didn't pay my rent. And he go, well, why didn't you pay your rent? He goes, I don't have it. And the judge will say, well, sir, I'm going to give the judgment to the landlord for the full amount. And if you don't get your rent paid within 5 days, he can do a writ and he can set you out. And the guy goes, okay. And I go, okay. I get my writ, I get my eviction. I go do my writ and everything works out. Well, guys, was an awesome video. I don't know about you, but this has been work. And I wanted to do a long video, and guess what? You got a long video. This is horror stories. And you know what? This is just the tip of the iceberg. Tip of the iceberg, right? There's so many more stories, guys. And some of them are funny. Some of them are horror stories. Some of them keep you up at night. Some of them go bump in the night. Some of them wake you up in the middle of the night screaming. Some of them raise your blood pressure. And some of them are, they're bigger than they seem and not that big a deal. But guys, if you're going to be a landlord, you got to be serious about it. You have to work at it. There's going to be challenges. There's going to be things. There's going to be horror stories. Tenants aren't going to do what you want to do, and plumbings aren't going to do what they wanted. I mean, plumbing's not always going to work, and every once in a while you're going to have a major disaster, and you're going to have to work things out and figure it out and take those lemons and turn it into lemonade. So guys, thanks for watching this extremely long video, and you owe me a like for this. So if you made it this far, I want to see some likes. I want to see equal views to equal likes, and give me those watch hours, right? And also, if you have not subscribed, or even if you have subscribed, make sure that you are still subscribed. We need all the subscribers I can get. I'm getting a little wasted here, getting high on my own supply. All right, so please like, subscribe, and tune in for more videos. It was great talking to you guys. You guys have a great night.